Hey guys, in this video we're going to look at how we deal with group data when we're finding measures of center. And it's pretty straightforward. It's just the problem is we don't know all of our data points sometimes in a set of group data. For instance, if we got a histogram or just a frequency table, we just have a summary of our values without necessarily seeing how many of each in each interval we have. So mean is pretty straightforward. We just have to deal with something called the class mark as we're calculating measures of center. Get my pen. And so this class mark is what's called, it is the median of each class. When I say a class, I mean a bin, a histogram, or an interval on a frequency table. And we'll look at how we calculate that in specific examples. But what we do is we take the total of what the class mark is, so this is our median of our class, times how many of that class we have. And then we still divide by how many data values we have. So it's not a whole lot different than what we might normally do. To find the median of a group data, we just report the class mark for where the middle value would be. And then to find the mode of a group set of data, we find the class that has the most data values. So for a histogram, that's really easy. That'll be your tallest one. And we report that as the modal class. Or we could also report the class mark as the mode. So here's our definitions of how we deal with this. Let's look at a couple examples. So this set of data is a bunch of athletes, 60 athletes total, and how long it took them to recover from injury. So in this frequency table, we had 5 that took 1 week to recover, 8 athletes took 2 weeks to recover, and so on and so on. So to find the median of this set of data, to find the mean of this set of data, we would find, so here's our mathy notation, the sum of the class mark times the frequency of each class divided by our total number. And all this means in this case, I don't have a interval, I just have a finite number here, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So our class marks are the same as our injury recovery times. So here I've got 1 week 5 times, plus 2 weeks 8 times, plus 3 weeks 12 times, and so on and so on and so on, divided by my total number of athletes is 60. So that total comes out to be, our calculator, 3.82 weeks. We are units here. Our median is going to be the interval that contains there's 60 athletes. To just find the median, we do the average of the 30th and 31st data values. So let's count up cumulatively. We've got 5, and then plus 8 is 13, and then plus 12 is 25, and then 19 in this next interval. So our 30th and 31st athletes are going to be in this interval. So our median is just 4 weeks to recovery. And then our mode is going to be our most frequent. And we see here our mode, there are 19 that took 4 weeks to recover. So our mode is also 4 weeks in this problem. Pretty straightforward. Now, in this next example, you see we've got intervals or bins. We have 14 walkers that walked between 1 and 5. Let's call these kilometers. And 9 that walked between 6 and 10. So you notice they've got a whole number of values for how many kilometers they've walked. And there's 50 total walkers. So how do we deal with mean, median, and mode? Well, for mean, we need to figure out what the class mark is for each of these. So the class mark of each of these would be the median, the mean of, or the midpoint of each class. So for this first one, 5 plus 1 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. So our class mark for this first interval would be 3. And our class mark for the second interval would be 6 plus 10, divided by 2. To find the midpoints, that would just be 8, and so on, and so on, and so on. So we've got our class mark for each interval listed over on the left. And there we go. Okay, so to find our mean, it's just like in the last example. Mean distance walked, it's going to be not 5 or 1, we're going to use the class mark 3. So 3 kilometers as an average or a midpoint times 14. This is the best we can do. And then plus 8, we had 9 in that interval, plus 13, we had 11 in that interval, and so on and so on. I'm running out of room here. We would continue that. Divided by, I have 50 total walkers here, so divided by 50. And for this one, we get a mean distance of 11.5. And that would be kilometers. To find the median, we're going to report the class mark of where that median value would fall. So 50 total walkers to get the median. It'd be the average of the 25th and 26th walkers in order. So here's 14, here's 23. So the 25th and 26th are definitely going to be in this interval. So we report the median of this one is the class mark for that, which is 13. And then the mode is the most frequent class. So this is the 1 to 5 kilometer class. We can do two things. We can say the modal class, fancy word, is the class from 1 to 5. That's interval notation that we used earlier for saying d for distance. 1 less than or equal to d less than or equal to 5. We could use either of those to report the median class, or the modal class. Or we could say that the mode, we could report the class mark here, would be 3. Now, if we get group data, we can use our calculators also to calculate these values. We just have to use the frequency list that we left blank in our previous video. So we get our calculator out again and we put this table. Now these are different numbers, but we're going to put the table, I've got this entered already, so we'll put this table in. And stat, edit. So here's our modal class in L1. So we put the midpoint of each interval in L1. We put the frequencies in L2. And we compare this to the data we have here. So our modal class of 3, 8, 13, and so on. And here's our 14, 9, 11, 10, and 6 for our frequencies. And then to figure out our mean and median, we're going to do one variable stats just like we did before. So second stat, and then, sec stat, calculate, and one variable stats. But now we're going to go in and we're going to put a frequency list in here. So our frequencies were in L2, so I'm going to hit second 2, put that in there, and we go through and calculate, and it will figure out for us all these values that we did earlier. There's our mean of 11.5. Our median reports it as 13. Notice it gives us the modal class. And then again, it's not going to count the mode for you, so you have to identify that as the most frequent for yourself. Now, if we get this as a histogram, the game doesn't change a whole lot. We just have to identify what these values are. You know, this is a 50. We'd have to read this as 40 to 50. So we would find our modal classes again. So our class marks again would be 45 and 55 and 65 and so on for each of these bins. These are our class marks. And then you've got to figure out your frequencies for yourself, which would be 2 and 5 and 10, 11, and so on and so on. Why don't you take a second and see if you can't pause the video and do this one on your own. So if you did this on your calculator, bring those guys over here, you should have gotten a mean of 81.2. You should have gotten a median of 85 And then you're also going to get a mode, 81.2, median 85, and you should also get a mode of 85, or the modal class, our tallest class here, is the 80 to 90 class. And notice in this histogram, they're not including the right edge. So a 90 would be reported into the 90 to 100 bin, 100 reported into the 100 to 110 bin, and so on and so on.